one of the things you start to realize as you go through your own self-improvement journey, and as well as working with other people in their journey, is this realization that most of us don't like ourselves very much. And you start to see how each of us are caught up in our own individual mind nets. We're tangled in our own particular set of problems that we're constantly trying to solve, or trying to escape, trying to get out of. And so we set up these goals, right? We set up these goals to become better, to become something different than how we are now, because we don't like very much the person that we are now. The most common goal is weight loss, right? Working with clients, they'll tell you the deepest things about themselves, and all it takes is for you to listen. If you listen to people, that they'll truly tell you deep things that they're ashamed about. And as a trainer, as a human, rather, I've learned that in these type of situations, it's hard I can't just give advice to them for what they should do. Because I realized in my own journey of self-improvement how I spent most of my life trying to run away from myself. Whether that was through trying to build muscle, trying to lose fat, or trying to get good grades in school, or trying to land a good job, right? This is what I'm talking about. We find these things that we hate about ourselves, and then we try to solve them by chasing a goal. Whether that has to do with fitness, has to do with career or education, it doesn't matter, right? But the common theme I've realized is that the whole effort of trying to escape yourself, that in itself is the problem, and why you constantly feel like you can't accept yourself and you're not good enough the way you are. For a long time, I sort of chased these goals the same way that now I observe other people do. And it's sort of this continual, you're just walking around the same cul-de-sac, but with different names, right? I remember when I tried to improve myself through fitness, right? And then started getting into shape, and then suddenly that wasn't good enough. Now I had to get into, getting good grades, and then when that wasn't good enough, I had to get a good job. So we go on from one method to the next, trying to escape ourselves, but it's never enough. And I noticed how I felt during that phase of my life where it seemed like I was achieving the goals, right? It would take time, but eventually, sooner or later, I'd achieve the goals I'd set for myself. And yet, I'd still feel this deep discontentment inside, like it still wasn't enough. And it took me a while, but eventually you start to realize how, as long as you're repeating this cycle of trying to get away from yourself, you're literally creating the problems that you're trying to run away from. As harsh as that may sound, right? If you told me that like straight up like that 2 years ago, I would have been triggered. Like, fuck this guy, like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And so we get very defensive when we're made to feel like our pursuits are in vain. But from all this running around, that's what I realized, it really is in vain, because the whole problem is that we're trying to get away from ourselves because we can't love ourselves the way we are now. And so this sets up this chronic cycle, and it's never ending because we're always thinking about the future. Like once you get to the goal, you're already thinking about the next one. The problem is that we're disconnected. We feel like we're separate from our goal, and so we go chasing the goal. But as long as you feel like you're separate from what you want to be, then by definition you're separate from it. And so we go on chasing, but we're so identified with being the person who doesn't have it, that this creates this lingering anxiety that we can never seem to get rid of. And this whole chase is really an illusion, because we think that our mistake is thinking that there's two separate parts of us, right? We think that there's this we call the lower self, right? The part of us that we want to get rid of. The devil, laziness, however you want to label it, right? We have this, the lower self. And then on the other hand, we think we have some like higher self, right? Put it in other words, call it discipline, right? We have to use discipline to curb the lower self, to curb laziness, right? So we go on in this perpetual effort. We're constantly like, it feels like a chronic strain. Right? We're constantly trying, gotta use discipline, defeat laziness, you know? But we don't realize that this so-called higher self and this so-called lower self, it's an illusion. Because if you were already your higher self, then would you still have to try to get rid of your lower self? Because if you knew what would be good for you, then why would you have to try in order to attain it? So it's sort of this illusion, because from the position of being who you are now, you are the lower self trying to pretend to be the higher self. Because a wise man doesn't try to be wise. A contented man doesn't try to be content, right? So you see that your whole effort in trying to become the ideal is a very symptom of not being that ideal. And so as long as you're identified as being separate from your ideal, pretending this is a higher self and this is a lower self, right? Forever you're going to be in this illusion of separateness. Because, you know, as long as you want to play that game of higher self and lower self, then life's going to feel like a constant effort. And one day the funny thing is, one day you'll burn out, and then you'll realize how funny all of it was. Because you realize that in giving up this whole effort of trying to get away from yourself, you realize you were already what you were looking for. It's only that you created this mind net that you've just completely identified with and believed that it was completely real. So really the most crucial step in transformation is coming to accept who you are now. And to a person who's constantly running around trying to change themselves, that sounds like utter bullshit. Because how can I accept the person I am now? He's not happy, he's not rich, he's not fulfilled, he's constantly anxious. Right, I don't want these. But the whole trick of it all, and this is, I guess the second step or phase in this self-realization journey, is once you've started to accept who you are, then you realize that's not the character that you have to play. You don't have to play that you're poor. You don't have to play that you're sad. And it's only after this acceptance of ourselves that we can actually begin to change. Because when you're no longer running away from yourself, then you're truly here. And when you're here and you're not thinking about how the past, giving stories about how the past is making you who you are, or thinking about how you need to get to some future. If you're truly in this moment and here, you realize that you are literally creating the past and the future in this very moment. Because all that the past and all that the future can come from is right here. So you think up the past from right now. You think up the future from right now. And so as long as you're identified with your story of how, this person wronged me, or I'm this way because of that, and all these cause and effect kind of things, it's an illusion. The past is an illusion. Because you're creating the past in this very moment. The same thing with the future. So this whole journey of self-transformation is coming to realize that you are literally creating the life that you're living. And it's because you've been unconscious for so long. You've let these illusions of past and future, you've let them carry your life away. But the key is to be this is being aware, right? No longer being identified and caught up in the mind nets that create the problems that seem so real. But realizing that from this very present moment, you're creating the story that you've been telling yourself. And in this instant, it can change. You just have to believe it. And so, all this journey of life is coming to terms with yourself and no longer trying to run away from yourself all the time. And when you're able to do that, you come to be able to accept this moment without labeling it or judging it, because your awareness, your unattachment to it allows you to see how everything is only this moment, and that everything that you thought was previously real was created because of an attachment to a story, to an illusion, which can only be created from right now. So the more you learn to become present and aware of this moment, the more ability you'll have to be able to catch yourself when you keep believing those stories of insecurity and of lack and of being poor and of being discontent. And you can change that. All that it requires is that you feel like You're already the person you want to be. That's all it is. Because when you feel like you are already that which you want to be, there's no longer the higher self and the lower self. There's no longer discipline needed to control laziness. Because by definition, when you feel that you're the person you already want to be, you come from a world of duality, and you realize you were never separate from it. So the whole illusion was creating that separateness. And once you allow those things to merge back in together, that's when you truly come to peace with yourself and are able to see that. You're able to see clearly. And all the things that bothered you in the past, you just laugh. Because they're as real as you make it. I hope you understood the message I was trying to convey there. And if you enjoy these talks on life, consider giving a thumbs up, subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. And see you in the next one. Peace out.